All the links to the original posts are given in the description. So now let's head straight to the video.
Is it immature for me to be mad at my wife not because I'm actually upset, but because she would be if roles were reversed? A little context, I am the more laid back between the two of us. We both know that, and it typically works very well in our relationship. This morning at 6:45, I was woken up by my wife's friend knocking on our door and ringing the doorbell. Apparently she had a long layover and asked my wife if she could stop in and hang for an hour or so instead of sitting at the airport. They hadn't officially locked down plans, but the friend sent a bunch of texts last night and this morning confirming she was coming, but my wife was asleep and didn't see them. My wife didn't even tell me there was a possibility of anybody coming over this morning. Granted, we have a lot of family stuff going on with 2 very young kids in the house, but there was zero mention of it. I'm not actually upset about what happened. My alarm goes off at 7 a.m. so I only missed 15 minutes of sleep. Her friend is super nice and I hadn't seen her in a couple years because of COVID and new babies. It was nice catching up with her after I groggily figured out what the heck was going on. I ended up taking her back to the airport because she stayed too long talking to my wife, and any other way of getting back would have taken too long. My issue is that my wife would be 553 if I did this to her. I would be profusely apologizing the rest of the day and trying to make it up to her. My wife is kinda laughing it off like, wow, isn't that crazy, my friend came all the way from the airport this morning. She knows I'm very laid back and don't care that much about the inconvenience. My wife is wound tighter and wouldn't understand at all if I accidentally didn't tell her about a surprise early morning visitor and had her drive them to the airport. I haven't told her how I feel yet because I'm not sure if my feelings are valid. I'm not upset, I just can't imagine in a million years ever doing this to her and laughing it off. It's understandable that you're having mixed feelings about this situation, and your concerns are valid. While it's important to have open and honest communication with your wife about how you feel, it's also important to approach this conversation in a constructive and understanding way. Here's some advice on how to handle the situation. Reflect on your feelings. Before discussing this with your wife, take some time to reflect on your emotions and try to understand them better. It's okay to feel that the situation would have been different if roles were reversed, but it's also important to recognize that people have different personalities and expectations in a relationship. Choose the right time and place. Find a suitable time when you and your wife can have a calm and private conversation. It's essential to ensure that the discussion won't be rushed or interrupted. Use I statements. When expressing your feelings, focus on how you feel rather than making accusations or pointing fingers. For example, say something like, I felt a bit surprised this morning when your friend came over and I didn't know about it. I wouldn't have expected you to be as understanding if it were the other way around. Be open to her perspective. Listen to what your wife has to say about the situation. She might have reasons or explanations for her actions that you haven't considered. Try to understand her point of view and be empathetic. Express your concerns calmly. Share your feelings and concerns calmly and respectfully without getting angry or confrontational. The goal is to have a productive conversation, not to assign blame. Seek compromise. After discussing your feelings, try to find a compromise or a way to handle similar situations in the future that makes both you and your wife comfortable. This might involve better communication or setting some expectations. Emphasize the importance of open communication. Stress the significance of open and honest communication in your relationship. Encourage both of you to express your feelings and expectations to avoid misunderstandings in the future. Remember that it's normal for couples to have differences in how they approach situations and handle surprises. What's important is how you both navigate and resolve these differences together. By discussing your feelings calmly and constructively, you can strengthen your relationship and find a balance that works for both of you. Now for story number 2. My wife gets very upset with me when I respond to her complaints with encouragement. This morning is a perfect example. We were having a perfectly pleasant time coloring with our daughter and talking, and my wife said she didn't know why she felt so tired today. She often complains when she didn't get a perfect night's sleep, which is obviously super hard to come by with young kids, and she likes to review every time she woke up due to a noise or something I did in my sleep, but last night she had really an idyllic night of sleep. So I heard her out, and when she was done explaining the things she thought may be making her tired today, I got up to start getting my daughter ready to drop her off at daycare, and I said, I'm sorry you are still feeling tired, babe. But fortunately we don't have too much going on today, and I think with a hot coffee and a slow start to the day you should be able to get through it just fine. Eve, though you're feeling tired, luckily you do have a solid 8 hours in the tank, you got this. She stood up and, not screaming but in her equivalent, which is a vicious tone, said you need to learn to just listen and hear what I am saying. You are the worst at just listening to me. I feel completely awful. I'm really struggling with my mental health right now, and I had a markedly rough day yesterday in terms of my depression. So to not spiral downward again, I asked what I should do better because I was genuinely trying to keep positivity in the house, and she told me to just sit there and tell her I'm sorry you feel like that. I feel like there is no place for my perspective or feelings when she wants to talk to me, and she complains all the time about me not connecting with her emotionally. I literally was doing that today by talking to her like I talk to myself when I need to get through a tired morning in a positive way, and she responded like I told her she doesn't matter or something. I don't want to share my feelings when the positive ones get shot down so viciously. What the heck am I supposed to do? It's clear that you and your wife have some communication challenges and differences in how you respond to each other's expressions of feelings and concerns. It's important to find a way to bridge this gap and improve your communication. Here are some steps you can consider taking. Active listening. It's evident that your wife values being heard and validated when she expresses her feelings. When she talks to you about how she's feeling, practice active listening. This means giving her your full attention, making eye contact, nodding, and showing empathy. Instead of immediately offering solutions or encouragement, focus on understanding her perspective and feelings. Empathetic responses. When your wife shares her feelings or concerns, respond with empathy. You can say things like, "I can understand how that would make you feel tired," or "I'm here for you, and I'm sorry you're feeling this way." This shows her that you acknowledge her feelings without trying to fix them right away. Ask what she needs. Sometimes, people just want to vent and be heard without receiving advice or encouragement. You can ask your wife, "What can I do to support you right now?" This shows that you're willing to meet her needs in the way she prefers. Communication outside of specific issues. Don't wait for problems to arise to discuss your communication. Have a calm, private conversation with your wife about how you both can improve your interactions. Share your feelings, concerns, and needs as well. This can be a more neutral setting to express your perspectives and feelings without the immediate emotional charge of a specific issue. Consider counseling. If these communication challenges persist and are causing distress in your relationship, you might want to consider couples counseling. A trained therapist can help you both understand and address the underlying issues in your communication. Take care of yourself. It's clear that you're dealing with your own mental health challenges. Make sure you're seeking the support you need as well, whether it's through therapy, self-care practices, or talking to friends or family. When you're in a better mental and emotional state, it can positively impact your ability to communicate and support your wife. Remember that improving communication is a process, and it may take time to see significant changes. Both you and your wife need to be willing to work together to find a communication style that works for both of you and promotes a healthier and more supportive relationship. Now for the third story. My husband raised his hand on me for the first time. What should I do? My husband and I have been married for a year now. We had been dating for 2 years prior to that. We have had a wonderful relationship. He is everything I have ever wanted, and he takes care of me much more than he needs to and puts my needs above his own most of the time. I have been very happy with him apart from his issue controlling his temper. It's not frequent, but when he loses it, he can be verbally abusive. Last month, he raised his hand on me, and although he apologized profusely and I forgave him, nothing's the entirely same. What should I do? Should I have left? I'm not an expert, but I can offer some general guidance that might help you in this situation. It's important to remember that any form of physical or verbal abuse in a relationship is not acceptable, and your safety should always be a top priority. Here are some steps you might consider taking. Safety first. If you ever feel physically threatened or unsafe, it's crucial to remove yourself from the situation immediately. If you fear for your safety, consider reaching out to a trusted friend or family member, or contacting a domestic violence hotline or shelter for support. Seek professional help. Both you and your husband should consider seeking help from a therapist, counselor, or a couples counselor. Professional guidance can help you address the root causes of his anger and your dynamics in the relationship. It's important for him to work on managing his temper and addressing the underlying issues that trigger his anger. Set boundaries. Establish clear boundaries in your relationship. Make it known that physical and verbal abuse is never acceptable, and both partners should respect these boundaries. Develop a safety plan. If you decide to stay in the relationship, create a safety plan in case of further incidents. This plan should include steps to protect yourself, such as knowing where to go or who to contact in case of an emergency. Build a support system. Reach out to friends, family, or support groups who can provide emotional support and guidance during this difficult time. Consider legal and protective measures. If you ever feel that your safety is at risk or if the abuse continues, you may need to explore legal options, such as obtaining a restraining order. Reflect on the relationship. Take time to reflect on your relationship and whether it is healthy and safe for you. Think about what you want from the relationship and what you're willing to tolerate. Self-care. Focus on your well-being and self-care. Consider therapy or counseling for yourself to process your feelings and make decisions that are in your best interest. Remember, it's essential to prioritize your safety and well-being. You should never feel obligated to stay in a relationship where you are being mistreated. If your husband doesn't commit to addressing and changing his abusive behavior, you may need to consider separation or divorce for your own safety and happiness. It's advisable to consult with a professional, such as a therapist or counselor, to help you navigate this challenging situation. Now let's move to the final story. I 35 Fahrenheit and having serious doubts about marrying my 35 fiancé. The wedding is in 3 months. Should I break the engagement or postpone the wedding? My fiancé and I have our wedding in 3 months. I am starting to have serious doubts if our marriage will be successful. We dated for 1.3 years, did some long distance and engaged for 10 months. I recently moved from Oregon to Virginia 5 months ago, and I started to notice changes in his behavior. We are both in high-powered fields with demanding schedules. He upholds values where he is to be seen as the man of the house, the provider, the primary decision maker, and the wife is to listen and support his work. In our fights, he said he does not respect or care about my work, his work comes before mine, and wants me to support his work and his vision. I need to ask him outside of the fight if he truly believes in this power dynamic or he said this in the heat of the argument. I am currently applying for jobs. He gives me a list of things I should do, and if I have a problem with it, he gets very frustrated, gives his reasoning, disregards mine, and ultimately makes the decision for the both of us. He also said things like if I don't want to listen to him because he is the man, I should move back to Oregon. Over time, I've noticed a pattern in arguments where he assumes the worst scenario, jumps to conclusions and engages in yelling, making excessive hand gestures, cuts me off, doesn't listen to me, throws his belongings on the floor, and expects a quick apology. He doesn't listen to my side of the argument and states I am disrespecting his work and need for 8 hours of sleep. To which I say, there is never a time to talk through things or have arguments. Hours go by in our fights until I say sorry. He also started to tell me what type of clothes to wear, to not be on my laptop an hour before bedtime. My concern is he is bringing these new restrictions after I moved here, and I am afraid of what more he will add 5 years later after we are married. He told me when I was living in Oregon that he wants his partner to maintain a healthy diet and exercise, but since the move, this frequency is new and now set as a non-negotiable. Recently, I asked when I start my job, I will need to bring my work home on occasion to finish tasks. He put a boundary stating I can only do this 2x a week for 2 hours in the PM and wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. to work from home, and no more because it will disrupt family time. I was so disappointed that he did not want to compromise and would rather just have me figure out my job constraints instead of coming up with alternatives. I said I can't abide by this and was ready to break this engagement. It was only then that he agreed to remove the time restriction and would work on his flaws. I feel very devalued, mistreated, and disrespected in these fights that are also increasing in frequency. I am losing confidence that this marriage will work for us, especially if we have a child and the increasing responsibilities this will bring. I told him I left my family, friends, job behind to move here, and this was a sacrifice I made. He said he doesn't see my uprooting as a sacrifice, as I could easily pack up and go home. The true sacrifice would be when I have a hob here, married him, and have had a kid. He sees my sacrifice as his equivalent with spending $35K on the ring. He was divorced before and sought counseling before. Another issue here is that I stated my needs in arguments, but this was the first time I communicated with him in writing and verbally after the fight, and he is now making changes to his behavior. Signed up for counseling and reading articles on controlling behavior, temper, etc. He asked me to give him 1 month and after for me to decide whether to continue with the wedding. He said he didn't want to lose me and he will fight for this to work. The invites are on hold. I don't know what I should do. I don't trust that he will uphold these changes after the wedding. I am uncertain if the patterns of control and anger will return. I did not talk to my family as he asked me not to. He has another non-negotiable where he wants to try for a child no later than May to prevent risk of Down syndrome, miscarriages, etc., and his stance is firm. Any advice will be helpful. Thanks. Redeeming qualities: he says he loves me. He spent $35K on the engagement ring that he financially struggled to pay off. And he paid this off. He put in $40K towards wedding expenses, which he says is the bride's family's responsibility, but is willing to help out. He takes me to the clinic when I'm sick. He lets me choose where to go on date nights. He is flexible with cuisines when eating out, takes trash out, carries heavy objects and groceries, cleans bathroom, toilet, does dishes, makes long-term plans for an apartment, concerts, games, etc. He accepted I can live in any apartment and in any city as long as it's an hour from the coast. If you like the story, hit the like and don't forget to subscribe the channel, and thanks for watching.